The opening ceremony, you're supposed to try to really embarrass the heck out of the guests.
Wait a minute, that wasn't in the script. I'm sorry.
This is a little something. The rest of the community knows about this, but this is something that I went out and did. Basically, we know how notorious people are for being late. I think it's late. We know how the doctor and the companions are so concerned about time. We want to make sure that these two always are on time for their panels and things like that. So I'd like to present them now with these. These, I don't know, nobody can see these, but you'll have to see them when you meet an autographs or something like that. These are official Poo Party tandem watches. And they're quite nice too. Yes, they do work. That's surprising. I was able to pull apart the watches, put them back together, I had spare parts left over, and they still work. So I don't know what else to say besides, basically, all I can say is hopefully.
Number 5, the BBC has asked me to write them the top 10 reasons why they still haven't renewed Doctor Who. It's fun going across the date line. After 6 months hard work, I still haven't been able to think of one, let alone 10. Number 4, let's read. Number 4, the totally evil werewolf in my novel Santa Claus, C-L-A-W-S, was from Canada, and I'm afraid she might have friends in the audience. I see now why they didn't give this to me till I came out on the stage. Number 3, I've used up all my best jokes in this list, so I'd only bore you in person if I can. 2, I'm doing a Star Trek The Next Generation novel for Plucket Books, and they want a finished manuscript in 6 weeks. And the number 1 reason I can't attend your party is because I couldn't get away telling you to party on dudes without getting lynched, so I'm having Larry Stewart do it for me. You may now proceed with the lynching.
Oh, this is very fun. Okay, so once again,
welcome to Just That Water.
I've got one of the little things. Have you got one of these, like, what is going on?
Kind of have to wait like 2 minutes.
So for the next 2 minutes, I do a sort of like mini panel that is another thing. I just want to know what I'm doing. It's not very well organized up here.
You're up here found drinks and I am. It's great.
Yes. One of my current projects. Currently, I am working on moving out here. I'm seriously packing up my home. And I've got a show to do in England in November. And then hopefully I will be in LA by February and doing more stuff here, if possible, within LA. But it's all very tricky. I've got immigration stuff to sort through, except for the last 3 months worrying about it. But hopefully I'll be out here and doing stuff, and I'll be talking to people from Warner Brothers for the last couple of days, and thinking about shows that are going on now. And everybody's so optimistic, it worries me. Like, we're spending a lot of time some longer stories.
How did you and Colin Baker feel when the show was cancelled in 1985?
Oh, we were like really happy, you know, like, yeah.
No, like, did you...
How did you feel?
Well, I was appalled. Like, did you and Colin Baker take it personally?
No, wait, no, you can't take it personally. If anyone ever met a personable person, Michael Gray. No, I mean, it's just, I mean, from my point of view, I'm one of those people, if somebody says something that I know is, like, not right, that isn't fair, I want to get up and have my say about it. And the worst thing for me was having the frustration of doing this man, talking with people like together, and then it's got to you. And not being able to, like, get up on a chat show and tell him what I really thought. He's spouting a load of stuff about, you know, viewing figures and, you know, saving money and all this. And they'd already had to pay everybody off. They had to pay us retainers. They'd already cast people. Scripts had already been written. We were getting in the region of 7, 8, 9 million. The show had been running with Sophie and Sylvester getting like 2, 3 million for the last couple of years. So, like, excuse me, what's the problem? So it was just, I know it was something personal as well, perhaps between Colin and Michael, but it wasn't personal with me. I just found it dumb and frustrating. And having to sit and watch this man on television, you know, as like a serious member of the television corporation, you know, talking about why he wanted to act, not to do, was very frustrating because I was not in a position to say, excuse me, could you get me on that show too so I can give him my opinion? But, which is probably some of the frustration that you've also experienced yourselves.
I agree that Jonathan Powell is the guest of the show. Well, then, I would produce it with the video.
I don't think I have to say that. Michael Gray said a lot of things that were totally untrue.
Our guests have not had their caffeine yet. Waiting for them.
Oh, I have.
So we're going to take them out back and come full of caffeine so we'll stay awake.
You, me, and Mike have the same video camera.
In the sense that, in hindsight, I feel I wish that I'd done some kind of course in drama school on this. If somebody had the sense. In fact, I would volunteer and go and do it at my own old drama school to like give people a little bit of basic knowledge about what you should and shouldn't do as an actor. You know, you spent 3 years getting up on the stage and spouting Chekhov, and you've got a clue how to behave on a set. In that, my first day's work really was in Lanzarote, which everyone goes, oh, how wonderful, how glamorous. Well, it's actually terrifying because you're away from home. You've got nobody to go back to and say, should I do this? Should I not do this? You know, is this okay? And you're so keen to please and like get everything right. My very first day, I think, I lose track now whether it was the first day was drowning or falling down the side of a volcano. I think the first day was like going down the side of a volcano. And I'd seen this in the script. And I said to Fiona, who was directing it, and I said, Fiona, where it says, and Peri falls down the side of the volcano, what happens? And she went, camera angles, love, camera angles. And I was like, oh yeah, fine. What? You know, I had no idea what she was talking about. So we actually got to shoot this bit, and it wasn't a volcano, it was a volcanic hill surface. And, but if any of you have ever been to the Canary Islands or seen or touched volcanic rock, and I break the law because I brought a little bit back, just to, you know, show to people what it was like, because I did a lecture recently to the Psychiatric Ceremonies, and I like got everybody to come and feel it. They weren't allowed to listen to it unless they touched this thing. And it's like glass. It's like knives. I mean, at least Fiona had the sense to say to them, I'm not having a run around in high heels thing. got, I had the only sensible pair of shoes I ever had in the whole series, was a little flat pair of espadrilles to run around in. And it's just lethal stuff. You know, you can't sit on it, you can't do anything with it, it just tears you to shreds. And so I had to fall down the side of this surface. And they give me instructions like, don't roll, we don't want you to roll, just like come straight down. Well actually, if you've got any distance to travel, it's impossible to stop yourself from rolling, because automatically, you know, various scientific laws start to take place. You have to roll. And the only way you can stop yourself is like with your hands, but you can't do that on volcanic rock. And the surface is so steep that I couldn't actually just like climb up and then fall down. They had to lower me from the top with a piece of rope. And then when they shouted action, they would just pull the rope away and I'd fall down. And the only camera angles aspect that came into it was somehow, don't ask me how or why, they tilted the camera, which made it look less steep than it was. And don't ask me the logic of that. Maybe they just wanted to make it look less cruel. But, you know, somehow they made the slope look like that, whereas it was really like that, you know. And it looks, when I play it back and I look at it, I think it looks so small, it doesn't look like anything. And they gave me these instructions. They said, well, you know, you fall down the side, please don't roll, you get to the bottom, you know, like, you look up and you go, ow, you know, like, pretend that it hurts. Then you get up and you walk out of shot. You come towards camera and you walk out of shot. Okay, right. So I'm hanging on the end of this piece of rope. Please, God, please. And they finally shout, action! The rope is pulled away. I fall down and I feel myself starting to roll, and all this stuff's going through my mind. Don't roll, don't roll. And I'm holding on there like this, and I can feel the flesh is falling out of my hands, you know, trying to stop myself rolling. I feel I do a slight roll, I get to the bottom, and I'm like, oh, this really hurts, no acting required. You know, the tears are welling up and you're like, okay, right, okay, now walk out of shot, and I'm walking towards the camera, and as I'm walking towards the camera, I realise the director did not say which side of camera to walk out on. So I thought, I'll just head straight for the middle. Some smart person will go like that, or like that, so I'll know to like veer my walk as I get towards the camera, you know. The cameraman, the production assistant, somebody will do that. No. I walk like I'm practically smack up in front of the camera, so I eventually have to make a decision, and of course, even the wrong one. And so immediately afterwards, Fiona went, oh, I wanted you to walk out the other side. Oh, well, we'll have to go again. Yeah. And I've got those little sort of peachy pink Bermuda short things on. And the makeup artist runs up and says, you know, are you okay? You know, and the costume designer, he was absolutely, he was a real sweetie. He was there all the time. He said, you're right. And I went, you know, can't speak. And so I just said, oh, I'll just sit down for a second. And I looked fine, I was like looking for the blood, you know, where are all these cuts? And I couldn't see anything. My hands were torn, but my legs seemed fine. I thought, this is crazy, that really hurt. But of course what had happened was my shorts had like ridden up as I'd rolled down and then come back down again. So as we lifted up the shorts, there was like, really disgusting. There was these great big crevices in my leg, and blood pouring out. And the makeup artist said, I'm sorry, it's going to take at least half an hour to fill that in. And so the production manager went, okay, well, I'm right for lunch. And you know what? I felt guilty. I felt guilty that like I was bleeding. I felt guilty that I'd walked out the wrong side and that nobody told me where to go. And I felt terrible. And I thought, in hindsight, I feel like, A, you know, if you're going to do that kind of stunt, there should have been somebody else doing it. And B, there should have been somebody there with like an accident book, and it should go in the accident book, and there's all those kind of things that nobody like tells you. And ages later, when Colin was filming Androzani, he hurt his little finger. It got hurt when he was hanging on the rope, and all the, you know, the miners were hurling fake stakes at him and doing all that stuff. And one of the extras got totally carried away. There's always one. And an injured Colin, and he had, I mean, his finger was like dislocated and it was black and blue and stuff, and it went in the accident book, and he got compensation for it, for a sum that I won't mention. My legs were scarred, torn to shreds, and of course the tan that they'd made me get before I went out there was completely lost. And I thought it would never recover. 3 years later, you can't see the marks. But it took 3 years, and I didn't know for the next 2 or 3 years whether those marks were going to go on or not. And of course I didn't see a penny, I just felt guilty. And there are things like that I think, whoa, that was seriously dangerous. And that should have been like sorted out. And the next day, of course, I had 8 hours of drowning. So you can imagine what those cuts felt like in the salty water. It's like, and we're like filming out in this appallingly strong current. And I'm not a good swimmer. It's a long answer to your question, isn't it? That's all right. When I first got the job and I auditioned for the job, John Tenner said to me, "Do you swim?" Because, you know, there's a drowning sequence in this. I hate swimming. I seriously hate getting in the water. I'm not a good swimmer. My sister's very good. And so, joking there, went, drowning is my speciality. You know, what a way to, you know. I'm thinking if I get this far, I'm going to have to go serious swimming lessons here. So I get the job and I'm like getting out with my sister saying, "No, I've got to be a better swimmer than this, you know." As it happens, I had that bag that was, you know, filled with that stuff, which worked a bit like a swimming ring, you know, it sort of like kept me buoyant, but it also meant pretending to drown was like practically impossible. So it wasn't too bad, you know, during like jumping in. And my sister's like been really good about saying, you know, "God, you know, you're filming with the BBC, everything will be fine, you'll be safe. You know, you'll be filming in 3 foot of water, you know, there'll be no problems, there'll be divers around in case anything happens to you. Don't worry about it, okay? You know that. Okay, fine, I'll be fine." And there we are, out there doing this filming. They've taken me out in the boat. There's nobody else in the boat. They are filming from the shore. They've done like, you know, with the camera zooming in to do all this filming. And there's nobody there. There is absolutely nobody out there. And we're in a little cove like this, you know, the beach is here. There's like rocks running around the outside here, and a current sweeping across, you know, like sweep you back to England, you know. And I'm like seriously swimming incredibly hard just to stay in one spot. And so instead of like once we've started shooting, getting back into the boat, which I couldn't do, I couldn't get back in, I had to stay in the water all the time we were refilming and refilming. So I was spending like from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in this water. And it's seriously exhausting, and besides being practically rescued by a guy from the German nudist-beach next door and all this stuff, we finally get to lunch, and there's this whole thing as well, because Fiona's having to shout action from the shore, and she's got this megaphone and she shouts, "Action!" You know, and you're going, "Sorry? What?" And then you start drowning, and obviously I could never hear cut because I'm screaming and I've got water in my ears and all that stuff. She said, "Just drown for as long as you can. When you finally feel like you're going to swallow too much water, then stop and we'll start again." That's what we spent the whole morning doing. And we get to lunchtime, and I'm thinking, well, somebody's going to come out and collect me or something. No, we get a megaphone saying, "Lunch, swim in!" Am I aware that I'm the novice on this show or what? I'm swimming in, and of course I can't see what everybody else can see on the rocks or from the shore. The black patches of like great rocks that you're going to swim into, because you're just like in this seriously deep water, and you're just like, "Ow! Oh, yeah, right." And then you move, you know. And I got to the beach and I was blue, you know, and everyone was going, "It's so hot, how come you're cold?" I said, "Because we've been out there for 5 hours, you know." The costume designer was absolutely charming. It just like was wrapping me up in towels and hurling soup down me and all this kind of stuff. I was going, "Why put soup on a day like this?" But it was, I mean, the first 2 days were like seriously dangerous as far as I was concerned. It's practical non-swimmer drowning out in the middle of the ocean, you know, hurling myself down volcanic rock. I sort of like arrived back in England like 6 days later, and there were bruises and like great big cuts and scars, you know, and all this stuff. And I'm like, "Hi, Mom." And my mother is such a sweetheart, you know, she called me all the time, and every night I get up to my room and she called me, she said, "How was your first day?" And I was like, "Okay." You know, and it's like, oh, right. But a long answer to your question, I think the first 2 days of Doctor Who were probably my most dangerous.
Only people that Peter talked to anyway. Yeah.
How did you get picked for Blackadder? Who came up with the lab?
Oh. Well, that's quite a good story, actually. At the time, I was doing Honey in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And as you may or may not know, in the script of Honey and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, she's got this irritating little laugh, which I've totally forgotten what I didn't have. But I was getting some very nice reviews for doing Honey, and reviews about this unbelievably irritating laugh in the show. And my agent got me this interview to do for Blackadder, and I came down to London and was doing this interview. And they said, well, we haven't really formed the character yet. She's going to be, frightfully posh, stupid little niece, and incredibly selfish and all this kind of stuff. But I'm thinking in terms of having a really funny laugh for her. And so I did the laugh that at the time I was doing for Honey and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I said, oh, that's really nice. I said, well, I collect laughs. Other people collect stamps. I collect laughs. And I was doing various laughs of characters and stuff. And we didn't form anything in the audition. I just did the reading and had a nice chat with the producer and the director, and that was it. And then I got the part, and we were rehearsing, and Ben Elton came in and he said, look, I've had this dream, I've had this idea about what I think she should sound like, and sort of like a high-pitched machine gun. So it's completely unautomatic, but so that you hear her coming down the street, this machine gun is approaching, and so I was like, oh, okay, right. So I went away into the bathroom and did a lot of screaming and shouting for half an hour trying to find this laugh, and I came back with it. And then, which they absolutely adored, and then they said, right, well, they started throwing in all these lines about, if that kind of laugh is coming down the street, we need lines like, secure the ornaments, and all this kind of stuff. So it's all it all happened sort of through improvisation and quite spontaneously, which was nice. But I've spent my life now being accursed by people saying, do that laugh again, which I can't remember what I did, but it came from the description of a high-pitched machine gun, which when you go back and listen to it, you can definitely hear it. It sounds like it's been loaded, and here we go. And the scariest thing of all was actually, when we actually shot it, because it was all shot live, was the way the set was designed. So I had to come in on one side and sort of wave at the window and then walk all the way around the set, practically running, and get all the way back round to the other side, to what was the front door, in time for him having said 3 lines and him reaching the front door, but to keep the laugh going all the time. And I was like, major practicing how long can you swim underwater time, how long can you hold your breath thing. And so I spent a couple of days seriously practicing that. I had enough laughter, breath in me to make that journey. And the thing is, you didn't want to mess up because it was a live audience. And it was just seriously scary.
Yes, sir.
I would. And I would go back and I would play Peri again. I'd play the same part. I would love to do something else as well in the show. But I just wish somebody would take the show away from the BBC, to be honest. And put some new life and some new energy into it, and accept the things that were good and traditional about the show and leave them alone, and just get some good scripts and just do it again, But there's some people I know who are seriously talking about doing it, but it's a case of getting the BBC to let go. They're just like spoiled children at the moment. They won't do it, but they won't let anybody else play with it, And I just think if they're not going to do it, then they should hand it over to somebody who'd like to do it.
Johnson has a question with the lens.
Oh, how are you and some of the other stars involved in getting the show back?
Well, I don't know in any extent that we are involved. We are basically, people always love to think that actors have a lot of power, and I think that movie, The Player, sort of basically sums up the fact that actors are the bottom of the list. We don't have any say in anything, we don't have any power. We are completely in the hands of the producers, the directors, the television moguls, as to what happens. if anybody comes up with a suggestion and wants to use you, of course you're going to be interested in it, but there is very little that we can do. If any fan or if anybody comes and says to us that we're doing this petition where we're going to try and get this together, of course you'll be out there and supporting them and doing conventions and talks or whatever that is going to bring this to the attention of the BBC. But the BBC have got their earplugs in and their iPads on.
Would you be willing to endorse a petition that's going round at this convention?
Pass it to me. Of course I would. You know, make sure I get it. Whether I get to do the show again or whether it's somebody else, I think as a kid who grew up watching this show that it has unlimited potential. That unfortunately it was in the hands of very limited-minded people, and so just get out there and do it. You know, I think it's very sad, and anything that happens to get it back together, of course I'll support it. As a fan of the show and as somebody who was in it.
The same was sent to two doctors and mentioned the horrors were fully tracking with your finger on that.
I'd love to know where you have these wonderful negative questions. Have you got any positive ones? I find it hard to believe that he said that.
Stop.
Oh, well, what do you expect? I'm sorry, but we already discovered that some magazine has told you I was filming in Germany. I have seen myself so misquoted in magazines and in fanzines, and things that people misquote the way you say something. Major things like sarcasm are completely taken, you know, in the wrong direction. As earlier, somebody asked me how did I feel when the show was, you know, cancelled. And I went, oh, you know, yeah, I went out partying. And you'll see that in print. Nicola was glad the show was cancelled. She went out and had a party. That's the kind of person she is. You know. I personally had a conversation with Eric in which he said how much he liked Vengeance on Varus. So that's why I find it difficult to believe. Well, Graham Harper is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, I think the best director that I worked with on the show. And, oh, well tell me, it's not the show, it's the world. There are so many crap directors out there, and there are very few good ones, and it's a fact of life. And there are a lot more good actors than there are good directors out there. Don't ask me why, but I mean, I could write a CV saying, you know, I directed traffic on the street, I did this. There are a lot of rubbishy directors out there with CVs that are like, you know, wow. I was asked to direct a show only a few weeks ago, and I actually turned around and said, no. I had to sit and think about it, and I thought, I don't want to be a director. I could have directed it, I probably could have done an okay job, but I'm not a director. Now maybe that makes me stupid. Maybe that makes me overly modest. And maybe there's a lot of people directing who should say no. But that's a fact of life. There are very, very few good directors. You ask any actor that. Most shows are like they try and cast them very smartly. Okay, let's get ourselves a good cast who, even if this is a crap script, are going to walk away and say, have you seen this shit we're doing? Right, let's get this show together. Because actors will do that. You know, you give them a crap play and they will go away and they will bring you back something with it if they're worth their salt. And because that's the way actors work. They don't want to get up there and make fools of themselves. And the same happens all the way along. And it's very rare that you get a good director. And practically zilch that you get a good director working with a crap script. So that the good directors are always going to come off looking good. Yes, it would have been terrific if all the directors we'd worked with had been like Graham Harper. But Graham Harper is like 1 in a million. Everywhere. Well, that's Peter wasn't used, as far as I was concerned, any more than Graham was used. If you look at my season, and he was used twice, and so was Peter. Excuse me. Those are the facts. For the time that I was with the season, Peter was used as often as Graham. Now, maybe over a longer spate, he's been used more. Peter is a lot older than Graham. Graham did his first show on Doctor Who. And he got another break on Doctor Who, feature movies. So that's not a fair complaint on John Nathan Turner. That's a fact of life. Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. But you just said that he complained that John, you don't really get much into the lawyer. He just said that he complained that Graham wasn't used as often as Peter. That's not true. On a scale of 25 years, yeah, but I mean, Peter is like, I don't know, Peter is seriously old now. And he's very sweet, and he writes me letters, and he does little bit parts as an actor now. I mean, he's officially retired. He's been working out in the business for 50 years. Of course he's going to have done more. But also, if Peter had been Graham Harper, he wouldn't have been doing the show anyway. He'd have moved on. So it's a case of how many young Graham Harpers are there out there in the world that you can get to do the show? I wish there were hundreds. As an actress, I've worked with 2 decent directors in like 50 shows. 2 directors where they didn't just leave you to come up with all the ideas. And that's really sad. But that's life.
Good question.
Deborah?
Have I got any new acting jobs coming up? I'm doing a show in England in November, another pantomime. I only do those every other year, because I can't face do them every year. And that's sort of like, it's a plus and it's a minus in that it's good to do them every other year so that you're fresh and you're not like, oh, pantomime. But also, I just couldn't face doing them every year. And which I'm not going to play Cinderella. I'm doing Cinderella because my agent said, if you play Cinderella again, I'm going to die. So you're not the only one. But I'm actually having a say in the writing of the script of that, which is rather nice. And I'm going to play Dandini, which will be a lot more fun, I think, than just playing Cinderella. I may be doing a bit of filming back in London, but they wanted to tie me to a contract that meant I'd like film 2 days here, and then 3 months later I'd film 2 days there on a series, and it's like, I don't know whether I want to be tied to that. My major project in life at the moment is trying to pack up my life in England, which if any of you have ever tried to like emigrate somewhere is seriously scary, and it takes a lot of thought. And I have to pack up my life before October, because I have to move out by then in order to do the show in November and all of that. So at the moment I'm trying to field off as much as I can and just sort of take something that's going to fit in with that. I've just finished, I set up my own company this year called Have a Banana Company. I don't think I should explain that. I should. Do you have Spitting Image? Do you know? I worked for, last Christmas, instead of doing pantomime, I worked for a company called News Review. And that is run by the writers of Spitting Image. And basically, it's a fringe show that's done in town and runs all throughout the year. And I went and did that for a couple of months over Christmas, and in which they do, at the end of the year, a season called The Best Of, and that's like 8 weeks of the best that they've done. Best sketches they've had that year. And it's an hour-long show, and it basically has like 40 different scenes in it, and you've got scenes of everything from like, at the moment they're probably running a scene with Dan Quayle spelling potato, and stuff like that. Whatever is current, and they do little sketches. And it's usually about 50% of it can be songs as well. So you get to play, like, I was like 40 different characters, and then I was like Marilyn Monroe, and I was Barbara Windsor, and I was like hundreds of different parts, I was Imelda Marcos and everything. And I was working for them, and they're the people who write Spitting Image. And I've forgotten why I began this. What was the question? Oh, new projects. Yeah, right, yeah. So anyway, and we did really... You're glad I actually do have a lot to talk about, because if I answered with one syllable. So anyway, this particular show got absolutely rave reviews, and we had some people come in and offer for us to go and take this show elsewhere. Well, you can't actually do that because the show belongs to this particular theatre. So as a group of actors, we got together and said, because one of the actors was one of the writers as well, why don't we just like take us out as a company? And we went out and toured around London, which was brilliant, doing the show. And the reason we called ourselves Have a Banana was like every song that we sang, we found that you could stick into the middle of it. Because it was really bizarre, like every song that we had, it seemed to slip in. And whenever the musical director was, like, playing around on the piano, he found that if if he got bored, he'd like be slipping this in. And as a cast, we were like desperate to call because nobody else was getting it. But like even like with a V take, you've got that song, you know, like da 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 dee 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 da 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 you know. Every song you can think of, you start trying to think of almost any song that you can think of from a musical, and you'll find that that slips in there somewhere. So that's why we call ourselves Have a Banana Couple.
Land of hope and glory.
It does actually. I mean, that's what's so weird. Yes, we tried. Right, sing the beginning of that.
No fear, though.
Come on, come on, come on.
I don't sing. Except in the key of all.
Speak in rhythm. Speak in rhythm. You'll find it.
I'm into
Do
it.
do 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 do
As Elgar rotates in his grave. Shadow is doing the Statue of Liberty. What?
That's very personal.
An inquiring mind wants to know.
Wait, did you read that we were doing something together? Oh, during my hiatus, I went away and did a show called Secret Garden, which maybe some of you read the book, I think, Compton Burnett, the children's book. And I got to play Martha, who is the all-loving, all-consuming sort of maid who, like, revives the children back to nature. And we did that in a theatre in Leicester, and we got extended for another month, so that was good. We did that for like 4 months odd. And we took it to an old people's home. It was a sort of like one-off charity thing, which was an absolute nightmare. But I think they really enjoyed themselves. It's just the two people in the front row couldn't hear, and the people in the back row could hear. And you'd start a speech, and someone would go, "What?" And the person in the back said, "She said!" You know? We were told to ignore this and just keep going. But I think they had a fun day. But it was certainly an interesting event. But no, I went away and did the Secret Garden. I think that was all I did, because I think it was like 5 months or something like that. To be honest, I forget. I want to come with sort of like my Final Facts diary of what I've done for the last 8 years or something. But that was what I went straight on to do.
Oh, how did you get involved with the Summoned by Shadows project?
Right, how did I get involved with Summoned by Shadows? Basically, this is Bill's description of it. Basically, I met Bill when he was a spotty little boy who used to hang around the BBC bar. And he had always wanted to do something with Doctor Who. And he works as an editor with BBC in Manchester, and he wants to direct. And he came up and said, look, you know, this is going to sound incredibly presumptuous, but would you be prepared to play a part that isn't Peri? Her name is Miss Brown. If we just change the accent, nobody will get us for copyright. Would you be prepared to come and do that? Colin will be playing a part called The Stranger, and we'll just be doing it for the film club, and give us all a chance to work with people and do stuff. And so I went, okay. And he was totally, I think he passed out or something, you know. And it was just a sort of fluke chance. He decided he wanted to do this, and his favourite show was Doctor Who, and if he could work with anyone, he wanted to work with us. So it was just very nice that he actually, in a way, had the courage to do that. Because a lot of people probably wouldn't have had the courage to say, this is my first project, I'm going to fund it myself, and like, would you do it? They would probably have just asked friends or something, and he had the courage to ask, and I think was lucky.
Okay, we have time. This gentleman had his hand up. This will be the last question. That's all we have time for. This.
Right, I think the very, very first role that John played was this like very happy kid jumping up and down going, I discovered her! Which is like, very sweet. And when we went out to Lanzarote, he was like very, how can I say, really paternal. In that he was aware that like this was my first shoot, and he wasn't necessarily like aware, I think, of the problems of like falling down the side of the volcano and all the drowning stuff. But he was like very much aware of what time she get to bed. And as she had something to eat, escorting me to my room and making sure everything was okay. And, like I shouldn't go out too much. It didn't work, but he was doing it. And he was there on a very sort of fatherly sort of level. And that relationship obviously changed throughout the years. And when I recently, last year, I was touring for the year, doing The Great Gatsby, playing Daisy Buchanan. And I was going to be in Brighton for a while. He said, oh, you're going to come and stay with Gary and I went and stayed there, and it was terrific. And he sort of gives me advice about a few things, and he's not on that sort of paternal level anymore, because I think it's like, oh, she's grown up. But that was the sort of vein in which we sort of began. And I was very much aware, this is the producer. But obviously as we work together, things mellow out. Was that the last one?
That's the last one.
Okay. I think we're doing another panel somewhere.
We have another one at 4.
Okay, so save those brilliant questions till 4. Okay, thank you.
Be able to hold this up in the mirror, it'll make sense, and then when you read mine, it makes sense, nobody else's will. Thanks, Larry. From Ottawa, it's got to make no sense one way or the other. Have you been to one recently? I got to. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't use it. That's right.
Yeah, John. It's an Italian.
Yay, great, great, well, okay. Thank you. Hi. All right. Hi.
I'm trying to show them.
Try not to freak out.
Oh no, I feel a quote coming on. Oh, please allow Miss Peri. What a pitiful performance. I know, how can I be so pathetic? Calm down. It's all learned. Stewart guy's fault. He called me a child with a flute.
When I wanted to identify it, I didn't say child, I said the guy with the flute.
I'm your child. I'm your child.
Well, then you is I didn't call you a child. Find the face in there.
Right, okay. Yes, maybe.
Find the space in there.
I only play one in real life.
Is this the same one?
No, this is a different one from the Sophie and Sylvester signed. You see, I get a doctors and companions, so when I go to Visions this year, Colin Baker's going to be there, so I'll get him to sign in. Three E's. We're going to go over by bye. See you in a minute. Go straight. Right there. Okay. I'm right here. I'm sitting right here. I'll take a few pictures. This is what the BBC does. Oh, brilliant. No problem whatsoever.
No, she's trying.
No one at all. You and Larry play a while for the cameras.
How can I have time?
I want to go to Toronto.
Oh, big for
For convention, and can I stay for 3 months?
You just added up the grocery bill. There you go, 6 pounds of coffee.
now go.
Oh my God, it's Michael Bryant.
Serious monster.
I'd like to know why 95% of the people that are on the show never remember which control opens the door and hit the wrong one.
Because they weren't as bright as Peri, and life's tough, you know. There we go.
Okay, hold on.
Door's open.
So we get one picture of this.
The door's broken.
Larry, get over here. Can't call the police for advertising. Chrissy, get back in there. Why? Martin, get back in there. Why?
Under the beam, 6.
Good job.
Yeah, I don't know what happens over here. That's right.
Tardis
Kill somebody else in that.
Oh, wait, well, then actually,
Don't say that. Well, the thing is, I've got to put
So I can say
Number 9.
much.
Larry, I need you. Oh, you too, Larry. That's okay. Did I ever? Hello. Hey.
That's not interesting.
It's night, I thought. Okay, hi. Yes again, I think. My questions are going to be filled in by the judge. So if anybody's got a question, just put your hand up.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything from the history of Doctor Who that you would have ever liked to have done? Like anything from the past or the present of the show that's ever been done that you wish you could have done that?
If I understand the question, which I'm not sure.
Okay, is there anything that you've ever seen in the show that you said, I wish it, like, that monster could have come back and met Peri or something like that?
Right, okay. So you mean stuff out of the... this is slightly unclear question. Do you mean stuff from other shows that weren't my shows?
No, from other eras of Doctor Who.
That is other shows that weren't my shows, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hello, Earth 2. Maybe I've got somebody's out there with me. Oh, seriously, weren't it? Other monsters from other shows. The one that I remember that scared me most as a kid was those sea devils coming out of the water. And I thought, those one of the things that I just, one of those, the strongest memory I think I had of Doctor Who as a kid. And I thought it might have been nice if I bumped into them. But since the only thing that my father kept saying to me is, are you going to do one of those with the Daleks? That was all he was interested in. And I finally got to do that. I think that was quite a buzz. Made me laugh. Yeah, oh yes. It was. And it made me laugh too, because we were in the rehearsal room working with the Daleks, and when we were actually finally filming as well, I just suddenly got the giggles. I just like, oh my god, I'm working with the Dalek. This is very funny. And they're like, what's your problem, please, Miss Bryant? And I was like, I'm sorry, you're paying me to work with the Dalek. It's really very funny. But anyway, no, I think the Sea Devils were the only thing that I particularly recall. I really looked to see the
All right. Next question, this gentleman.
How long did the makeup take for Vengeance on Paris? Where you?
I thought you were afraid to be like Wolf, you know. How long does it take to do your face, Nicola? Whoa! Well, you know.
That's just the black and white.
Paranoid or what? Actually, the makeup should have taken longer than it did. Shall we move the table?
Can you still hear us, can you?
Okay. The makeup was supposed to happen in like 3 stages, and I'd had a face cast done, which was actually slightly embarrassing because it was the head of the makeup department who had done this face cast. And it's actually, if any of you have ever experienced anything remotely like this, it's quite scary, because they put straws up your nose, and that's the only way you can breathe, and you can't see anything. And of course, it's like complete cast, and I'm like, and it's actually incredibly heavy, because they had to like do a cast on the same line as that wonderful costume I was wearing. And so there was a lot of this plaster of goop sitting on me. And the weight of it is quite immense. And I said, after about 5-10 minutes, because it was like 20 minutes I had it on, which is a long time, I said, you know, I couldn't speak, but it was like getting really heavy, and I was like trying to indicate to somebody that this was really pressing. And they finally got a chair that had a back on it so I could rest my head. When they took the cast off, the makeup artist said to me, oh, you've got a smudge on your nose. So I was like, oh, okay. And the little bone on my nose had like been, all the pressure had gone onto this little one area. And within the 20 minutes that I'd had my cast on, they bruised it. And we were like going to be shooting in 2 days' time. This was like the head of the makeup department was now seriously embarrassed. And so that was the beginning of the trauma of that makeup. And then they made, from this mold, they made 3 paper-thin, sort of like flesh beards. Oh, it was very strange, suddenly having hair here. I thought, very Western now. And they put onto these like little skins several different layers. So like the first one had like only like a dozen feathers on it, and then the next one had a few more, and then the final one was like the full one. And then once you put the mask on, they just like covered the edges, like a few extra feathers. Now, it has to be glued on with this quite strong glue, because it's got to stay down. You can't really have any air bubbles or anything like that. And it's the same sort of like spirit gum stuff that the gentlemen use for their moustaches, which is a very small area, and you go, no, it's not very nice, but all that, but it's like just a tiny area. And you don't do it like 3 times in one day. So they put the first one on, and surprise, surprise, we're always running short of studio time. And they're getting under pressure, and they have to like take this one off, and they get like, it's practically like acetone, you know, the stuff that you take your nail polish off with, to start to edge their way with this brush underneath this face mask to get the glue off. Well, it takes about maybe half an hour to put it on, but maybe another 40 minutes to take it off, because it's actually a longer job to get it off. And they took the first one off, and your face is feeling sore and raw, and then they have to put the other one straight on top. So you've got like the second lot of glue now happening on top of where you just had to take all this off. Well, we got to like doing the second one, and as we came off the studio floor, the production assistant came up to the makeup artist and said, we have to shoot this next sequence within half an hour. So you've got to get this one off and the other one on within half an hour. And they loosened the edges, but then they just practically pulled it off my face with almost like, not the skin coming off with it, but certainly feeling very close to that. I mean, it was burnt practically. And then they stuck the other one on for the final scene. Well, my face was absolutely raw by the time I got to take the third one off. And the next day we were shooting outside, and the sun, the minute it hit my skin, which was so raw, just like, I had this wonderful red shape of beard across my face, like, you know, razor burn. Oh, it was awful. The makeup artist had quite a job. She was that, and she was trying to cover this black speck on my nose. I think I was causing them a lot of problems. But altogether, it was sort of like, roughly, it should have been about 40 minutes to take it off, half an hour on to put it on, 45 minutes. But to do the whole thing should have been like 4 or 5 hours, but we did the whole thing in about 2.5 hours, shooting the whole sequence. Which I wished it had been longer.
Next question. Yes.
Playing Peri, on all the stories that you did, which one do you think would be your high points, and which ones are you not so happy with?
Right. Do everyone hear the question? Yeah. Okay. I suppose in a way, I was most happy at the beginning when I was doing like Planet of Fire and Caves of Androzani, because I thought there was the beginnings of an interesting character here, and you then imagine a development which didn't really take place within the following season. I think some of the writers like harped on something they thought was very funny, like the language thing and all that kind of bickering, which I think works for a limited period, and then you drop it and you move on to something new. But I really liked the way that Caves came together. I mean, I would love to reshoot it now, and I think I'd probably play it quite differently. But I thought that was a very good story, and I loved the way that Graham gave us all nervous breakdowns and came out with a good show. I enjoyed practically nearly all of Trial of a Time Lord because of the break. Colin and I said, look, when we come back, you're going to have to write things differently, because we want to make it as though they've been together longer and they've matured and they have a different kind of relationship. So that was more the kind of relationship I wanted to sort of work out with the Doctor. But my most disappointing, miserable, anxious-making, pissed-off feeling, was when I was doing Mark of the Rani. I got quite annoyed with parts of that, but the worst of all was Time Lash. I loathed that story, I have to say, because I felt we'd like been stuck in some kind of time warp, because you could have given this script to Tom Baker and it would have been exactly the same, and I thought it wasn't making any statements about being in the 80s. It was a rather immature young man who'd written the script. I think he was just fulfilling a few fantasies with it, actually. It's like, oh, well, let's just take Peri and tie her up over there for half an hour.
Well, I also wanted to know, one of the episodes, I can't remember which one it is, but you know, nasty remark at Colin Baker, was that your idea?
Do I? Oh, I don't remember. Which one was that? I probably did this frequently.
It was on film.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was planned, but which story was it? I can't remember.
Two Doctors. It was on the Two Doctors.
On the Two Doctors. Oh, yes. I think I recall something.
The first time I saw it, she said, what?
I don't remember what I said. I'd have to go back and play that myself, but I'm sure I would have made sure it was reasonably alright. Because when I was growing up as a kid, my mother was deaf, so she couldn't hear what anyone was saying all the time. That makes sense to me. And one of the first shows that she came to see me do, she used to lip read brilliantly. Afterwards we were talking about the show, and she said, I thought that was so funny when you guys were walking off stage and you said blah, 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 and I went, that's not in the script. When did I do that? And she went, just when you were going off at the end of the second scene. And I went, oh, she caught my ad-lib. And she thought that was the funniest bit. It was just something that I was like muttering under my breath as I went off stage, and it wasn't particularly, it wasn't like part of the script. It was relevant to the play. It wasn't me, it was the character. But she thought that was the best bit of characterization, the best part of the play. So I've always been terribly aware that when one does do it, that there are people out there who can work out exactly what you're saying. So I'm sure I would have said something that was, could have been respectable had it been heard, but I don't remember what it was I said. It got me curious now, I'll have to play it back.
What do you think of all the other doctors?
What do I think of all the other doctors? Well, starting with Hartnell. Well, I never really saw any of the William Hartnell things. My mother and father were thinking about, getting together. And they might have watched them, but I didn't at the time. Recently, though, they've been showing them again, just like one story from each doctor, and I saw some of them. And I suppose just watching them now, they just seem slow. Oh, yeah, it's like watching other, stories from that time. You just think, well, yes, I mean, it's fascinating to see how advanced we were in 1963, but it just sort of like wouldn't hold my attention to sit down and watch it now. Now, Pat Troughton, I thought was absolutely brilliant. I've never really sat down and watched his either. The first doctor I remember was John Pertwee. And yeah, when I got to work with him, watching him work, to me, he was in a way kind of the quintessential doctor, in that he wasn't, I imagine that if I was sitting in a restaurant and the doctor was in the restaurant, you wouldn't really notice him at first, because he'd like be taken up and self-absorbed in whatever was going on in his mind and his world and stuff, and he'd be like over in the corner and eating his pasta and working on something and doing something, and then probably suddenly your attention would be drawn to this man because he'd be going, and he'd remember something, and he'd go off and do something, but he wouldn't be somebody that would necessarily intense sort of manic quality, but also very sort of warm and vulnerable, and I just thought he was an interesting bundle, I think is the way I would describe him, and I thought his work was lovely. And then of course, obviously I adored John Pertwee because he is my first recollection of Dr. Who's on. And I thought he was wonderful, and I thought Liz Sladen was probably, I think, for me, like the epitome of what a companion should be about. You know, I mean, she used to have some appalling lines to say, but she made them really wonderful. You know, like really scary or whatever. It was like I thought she was brilliant. And I just thought that was sort of my idea of a superb companion. Although I also liked companion Joe. And then there was the Tom Baker era, and I enjoyed Tom Baker's era, but it wasn't the same as like the first Doctor, because I had to go through my first, they reincarnate me, and get used to having another Doctor. I used to like watching Peri and Louise Jameson. I used to think, why is she wearing that silly costume? And then I expect a lot of people thought that when I started. So things come back to you, don't they? And then I didn't really see much of Peter Davison's Doctor, because I'd sort of like started in drama school myself, and so I wasn't at home when it was on, so I sort of missed a lot of that. So when I got the part, I suddenly had to like go, oh gosh, I want to see it, you know. Haven't really seen much of his Doctor, and luckily they did a summer rerun, so that was good, so I got to watch those. And then you know what I think about working with Peter, and you know what I think about working with Colin. And unfortunately, I really haven't seen anything of Sylvester, because I've been too busy myself. Then we did bump into each other at the airport in London last week. What are you doing? What are you doing here? I only know him sort of on a sort of slightly social level. He seems like a charming man, but I don't really know his Doctor as well as I do the others. So I don't like have a favourite particularly, because they all mean different things to me. But I think it's quite interesting seeing the progression of them. I just want to know who's going to be the next one. It's probably a question we all like to know.
Yes.
Are you available for the pod?
As long as I don't have to come across it and have this breakdown in slow motion. Oh god, we have the hand up first. Stop on the left and work our way across.
Your last story, how was it like working with Brian last
Brian, he was great. He just wanted me to go climbing with him up Mount Everest. I couldn't convince him that it wasn't quite what he seemed. He was terrific. He was great fun to work with. The interesting thing is that we didn't really know that we were supposed to eventually be married as characters or anything like that, because it was a sort of twist that was put in later, because John had asked me how I wanted my character to go, and I said, well, I don't want to wave goodbye. Bye, Doctor, say the postcard. Like, oh wow, what an interesting person. Like, you really changed my whole life, you know. Let's be real here, folks. So I don't want to just like say bye and sort of underplay the situation, and because I couldn't actually imagine being allowed the script that would actually play the real situation. The only alternative I could see would be to get killed. And I liked the idea of it being dramatic, though I didn't know that that was actually what was going to be planned. All I said was, I'd like to go out with a bang, which unfortunately the press got hold of.
Yes, we all.
So John said, fine, okay. And then he came back with this idea about the mind explant and all of that stuff. I said, oh god, yeah, that sounds really exciting. So I said, okay, that sounds good. And we didn't know that the fact that I was going to get killed off was actually going to cause as much stink as it was, because I mean, they got a lot of letters afterwards, and a lot of young people were upset, and the phone lines were blocked to the BBC. I didn't do that to my and all that. It's like, oh, what's up, dear? What are people upset? And a lot of fans of the show also wrote to me and said, weren't you disgusted about the way you went there? I went, no, it's great. Because I mean, I don't think that it's a problem if you kill somebody off, because like all you have to do is go back to last week and you're alive. So, you know, in a time show, it's not a problem about if you killed that person off, you can never see them in another show again. I really liked it, but the thing working with Brian is we decided that because of like various scenes, the way they were written, like the scene in the cell, that although we weren't going to play it like we were like to be husband and wife, there was definitely a chemical attraction as far as Yukanos was concerned with Peri. And that Peri really, I think Peri's idea of a nightmare would have been to be married to Yukanos. Because, I mean, either she would have to have got in like this, because no more running around, no more wars, none of this, but, you know, because she wouldn't have enjoyed that. Or else she would have to have gone through some major sort of change. Though I think they got on because she like enjoyed explaining things to him about it, and you know, sometimes, you know, when you get really exasperated with people, you just have to turn back and go, oh my god, it's the way they are, yep, like it or lump it, you know. But we decided we just sort of like pretend there was this sort of like possibility of a relationship. So all I can say is that when we finally found out that we were going to eventually have been married off, we were glad we played that. Because otherwise, the terrifying thing is that, like, you know, you're watching the show and then you discover 4 or so episodes later that what's really happened to Peri, she's married Yukanos and gone off somewhere to be Queen of Krotep or something. And you think, well, they certainly didn't play it like that's what was going to happen, you know. But Brian was really, really good fun to work with. Very enthusiastic man, about as loud as he appeared. Larger than life fellows, and was just very, very keen that we were going to go mountain climbing together. Which makes it sound like something else, but no, it wasn't. He was just like, you've got to go climb a mountain and breathe the air. Very enthusiastic.
Yes.
Do you think that there was any similarity between you and Peri?
Oh, absolutely none.
It's just that they look alike, that's all.
No, yes, there is. There is. Obviously, there are parts of me. I mean, with any character, if I got to play a serial killer who, like, you know, was the most unpleasant person in the world, there would be part of me that it was based on. Even if it was just the time that the fact that your dog keeps crapping on the carpet. You just take something that is just like the most minuscule part of yourself and build on that emotion. Kill that guy. Yeah, you are adorable, I can kill you. So you always have to take some part of yourself, some little seed, and build on that, and hopefully end up with a great tree, but sometimes you don't. And, there are parts of me that were definitely linked with Peri, but I actually did base her on a friend of mine. Yes, we're still friends. Who I was in school with, who was from New York, and her name was Sarah Sonderica, and there was lots of parts of Peri that were very much like Sarah, because their backgrounds were very similar. And when I finally told her, she just couldn't believe it, because she just like started rewatching them and saying, I'm not like that. Well, yes, you are. But yes, I mean, there are definite similarities. I couldn't pinpoint. I suppose the part where at the beginning, the first script I ever read, I actually read it in audition as well, where Peri turns around and kicks the master back and says, you know, I don't care, I'm going to be in the band, I'm going to give as good as I'm getting, all that stuff. There's parts of me that are like that. But they're also in the very self-same situation. The next day, I wouldn't do that, you know, I mean, I wouldn't say that I do that every time. The next day I go, oh fine, just kick me, you know. I suppose sort of the adventurous side of Peri is probably the most important side for me. But it's like all the roles, parts of you are in there, and some parts are bigger, and I would say maybe like 25% of Peri was me, which is quite a big group, really.
When you pick the overseas location, where did you prefer Androzani or
Well, other than the things that I was asked to do in Lanzarote, it was probably the most comfortable, in a way, shoot that I had temperature-wise, because it was like in the 70s, and I was wearing like cotton shorts, cotton shirt. Oh, this is really comfortable. And that was like, I suppose, probably the only shoot I had that was comfortable for me. Because the next shoot that we went on to, I had the same costume, very smart. And we're filming in Poole, in Devon, and it's below 0, and I got frostbite and pneumonia. And they very kindly gave me a whole day off work to recover. And when I think back through all the shoots, most of the time, whatever I was wearing was either physically uncomfortable or the temperature was uncomfortable. And Seville, I called myself the Kentucky Fried Bacon chicken in that thing, because it's like the material that was used for that little shiny top, which looks very nice, was terribly rough. It was like metallic threads, and it was really, really rough. And of course, being shiny as well, it trapped all the light. It's like all the heat. So I just put it on and baked myself. People used to make jokes about, do you smell burning flesh? So that, which could have been a more pleasant shoot, was not. And it was about 118 degrees. And of course the makeup artists were going mad. I mean, especially with such like Colin, this was like giving up hundreds of pounds of powder being hurled at his face just before he went on. And if you got any sense, you just said to them, look, I'm going to get a tan before we go out, so don't put anything on. And I'll just like, quick bit of lip gloss, and then there, and that was all. Otherwise, if you were just going to try and do proper makeup at 118 degrees, you were going to be in big trouble. And of course, people like, John Stanley were having terrible trouble. Those little Rice Krispies kept coming off. It was quite difficult. But I prefer to be hot. I'd rather fry bacon foil than freeze, which is what I did most of the time. So Lanzarote would be my ideal situation to be sort of walking around cotton shirt, cotton shorts, black shoes, 70 degrees. That's it. That was my idea of comfortable working.
Okay, how did you find working with Paul Darrow, Kate O'Mara, and Jacqueline Pierce?
How did I find? Is that the...
And what would your fond memories be of that?
My fond memories? There's an assumption there.
Ooh.
How did I find that song? How did I find? Well, I got the map out. I don't think there was anybody that I had any problems with working with in the whole time that I was in Doctor Who, which is amazing. There was one particular actor who will remain nameless who upset a lot of makeup artists and was extremely rude to other people, but he was charming to me. That didn't make him endearing, but I didn't have any problems with him. And I think that there was more sort of stuff going on between Paul and Colin, were sort of like ribbing each other all the time when they were working together. It was quite amusing. But it was, of course, my least favourite story, so I wasn't particularly happy to be filming that particular story. And Paul and I have done several conventions together, and had a very nice time. And Jackie is, as you probably, any of you have ever met Jacqueline, please? A wild and crazy kind of girl, you know? Which can be a lot of fun, and she certainly was. I think I'm very careful. I don't think I can say much more about this. And we got on, who else was it? And Kate O'Mara.
Yeah.
Oh, Kate O'Mara practically was the person responsible for converting me to giving up meat, which is quite a lot. I was quite intimidated about working with Kate O'Mara because she's a very intimidating lady. She's not, as I said earlier, how I imagined the Doctor, being somebody who you wouldn't necessarily notice at first. She is one of those actors who comes into a room and demands to be noticed that they're there. She's not a prima donna or anything like that, but she makes her statement. She is always there. You know, and so we're waiting to film Martha the Rani, and surprise, surprise, in Great Britain. It is pouring with rain, and we are sitting in our caravans, having been there since 6:30 in the morning, waiting for the rain to stop. And of course, Colin and Kate know each other because they did a television series together before. So they're just like chatting away, and I'm just sitting there very quietly because I feel quite sort of like this woman is like, you speak when you're spoken to. Sort of, and I felt very much sort of like, oh, I'm going to be very quiet here. Yet within like the second day, we were like becoming really, really good friends. But she's just got a sort of it's not really particularly cold. It's just a very strong status, and she's like obviously very confident. of who she is and what she is. And at first I found that rather intimidating. So I'm not beating her. But I got on very well with all of them. So I think that answers that question.
Yes. Next. Yeah, go there. I'll get back to you. Go back on this side in a minute.
You may, I may not answer it. Oh, that's all right. I don't mind that.
We can work our way back, don't worry.
I was 17 on the day I started, and my agent had been selling me as something I wasn't, surprise, surprise, and decided that I should be 21, because he thought that was a good age and the character in the show was 21, and so he had sold me as 21. But I was, no, I probably just had my age, I don't remember. Whatever time of the year it was, I was just about to have my birthday, because it was like October that we started filming, and that was when my birthday was.
Like working with Patrick McNee and killing Jessica.
Patrick's an absolute gem. He's coming, hello little one, he was charming to work with, utterly charming. And you like doing them every weekend. I think you've got to sort of like sort out how many you're going to do. And I think I'm probably doing like 2 in England, 1 in America, and 1 in Canada this year. And that's what I'm going to do. It varies completely. I mean, sometimes I do a ton 1 year, and sometimes I don't. But I do mostly charity conventions in England because I prefer the way that they work over there. So I've done a couple of the ones that are supposed to be sort of organised, you know, to give the actors a fee, and they haven't been happy with the way they've been organised. And so it varies a great deal. But this is my second Canadian one, which means something. And I'm doing 1 in the States in November, and that's it for this year. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's right, that's it.
That's right, yes.
I was wondering, what did you do, like, when you were told that your job was delayed for a year? How did you feel? Could you get it with the next season or stuff?
How did I feel?
With my fingers.
Obviously, I was the same as you, I was upset. And I couldn't get out, it's a one-way contract. The BBC had the option on me all the way along. You know, and you get 6 pence more every story you stay.
That's not it all in one place.
No. And so I just went off and I did some theatre because I just had to do something else during the hiatus, as people call it. But I was furious because scripts were written for the next season, and Eric Saywood and I have got on very well. Eric talked about writing this really exciting story which never happened, in which I was going to meet the other half of myself, which was going to be the evil side of Peri. And it was like, wow, story for Peri and all that kind of stuff. So I was sad that none of that sort of got off the ground, and that when we came back, we weren't really able to use the scripts that we'd used before. And I would like to have taken Michael Gray outside.
Showing the evil side of Peri.
Yes. Take a look at this, Buster. Yeah, that's it.
So just for a second,
Yeah.
how exactly used in theater, and how do you plan to make it recur? Like you just tell your boss that you have to leave a certain point, and you should report like that.
Well, it's not the same as like a regular job. I mean, we knew that if we came back, we would be coming back at this time. So, and I was not actually allowed to do any other work because technically I was under contract still to the BBC. So any job I got was limited in time. You weren't allowed to get anything that lasted longer than like 2.5 months, and you had to get the BBC's permission in order to do it. So I got a play, and so I went to the BBC and said, I would like to do this play, please. And they went, okay. okay, when does it finish, when does it start? They gave me permission to do that. You have to do like one thing at a time. And then I did the play, and the play got extended for a month, so I said, please may I stay for another month? Yes, you may. And it was all sort of like, please sir, may I? And so it wasn't a case of me like going out and saying I could do a long-term job anywhere else.
Great chat behind.
When it came to shooting and rehearsing, did you find any major differences in the way you worked with Peter Davison and Colin?
I suppose the major difference that really developed was that because I got to spend more time with Colin in the end, we got to know each other better. And so I think I was more at ease eventually with Colin than I had been with Peter, because also it was my first job. I was straight out of drama school. He was a very established actor in England, and I was like, so that's something else to describe how I felt. So it was very difficult for me to sort of like actually feel relaxed and be able to sort of like say, well why don't we do this? Why don't we try that? Whereas with Colin, having worked with him for a longer time, I was more free to like give my opinion about things and work things out with him. If we both had a problem about something, we'd turn around and say that we don't think this works. So obviously for me, in a way, I was happy working with Colin, and that it became something better than I think I had with Peter.
And why was it that the stories that had been prepared for the season after hiatus, why was it used?
I think they felt because they had to come back with something different, because they had to like, John and Turner definitely felt that there had been a break in the series, and so that ought to be reflected in the stories. And so there was like a different look for Peri and a different feel, and the relationship between the Doctor and Peri had changed. And I think, perhaps rightly so, they felt that that was the right thing to do. I think the only alternative would have been to bring those stories back like later, having done a sort of like, this is how we are now, and like revamp them and bring them back. But of course, I mean, I'd left by then anyway, so the stories became irrelevant. And I think probably it was the best decision, but for me there was an immense sense of frustration because we lost the shoot in Hong Kong. There was a possible shoot going to be there. We lost a possible shoot in New Orleans, and we lost Eric Sohn was going to resign as script editor for 6 weeks to write a story for Peri, and we lost all of those things. And so it was disappointing, to say the least, for me. And the first story was going to be The Toymaker, which I think they've released the book or something. Yeah. And the actor that they were going to have for that, his name has gone right out of my brain. I'm a big fan of his, so that's really good, isn't it? The name of somebody you're a big fan of. But probably some of you might even know.
Michael Bryant.
That's right.
Is that where the button back then?
That's right. Yeah.
Really?
Michael Bock. So I was looking forward to doing that one. It sounded like a good story. We're going to go to Blackpool and all that. So, but I think they felt that they had to do an explanation of what the hiatus was. I would say to anybody who wants to do it, don't. And that's honest. Don't. I mean, it depends whether you're talking about in front of the camera or behind the camera. Either one. Well, they're worlds apart. Don't become an actor unless you'll die if you don't. Because if there's any other job you can do it. Because it's going to be too painful if there's any other job you can do. There's no security in it. There's a lot of angst, a lot of pain, a lot of shit. There's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of joy when things are going right too. But don't put yourself through that. If there's any other job in the world that you think you might rather do, or you might enjoy, do that. Because it's not worth putting yourself through it unless you're going to die if you don't do it. It's got to be the only thing you want to do. Because otherwise, you'll never get yourself through the bad times. Technically, I think it's a more stable job if you're behind the camera. A lot of people do manage to earn, a permanent living doing stuff like that. And also, you can go out in the evenings and you don't have to worry about what you look like the next thing in the morning. But it's so hard to say. I mean, my only advice is get the technical training that is required. Whatever it is that you want to do, if you want to be an actor, go to a drama school, not just any old drama school, but aim for the best. And just give yourself some kind of qualifications. And if you want to direct, well then start directing little things like, you know, Bill Baggs has put this stuff together, which is like terrific. Whatever it is that you want to do, go out there and do it. Get something behind you, so that you can go to people and say, look, this is what I can do. And that's the best advice I can give you, and good luck.
What is your favorite Doctor Who episode?
What is my favourite Doctor Who episode? What is my least favourite Doctor Who question? Is what is my favourite Doctor Who episode? I don't have one. It's the bucket of water for the gentleman in front, please. I don't have one particular favourite. Like I said, I enjoyed the last season because I thought the relationship between the Doctor and Peri was better. And I loved Caves of Androzani, and I liked the idea of vengeance on Vass, and I liked the creation of Syl, and I liked working with Graham Harper. And, you know, there isn't one. I mean, I just definitely had my least favourite, which was Time Lash. Just get a stick bag on the plane. Oh, sorry.
What's the difference between North American fandom and British fandom?
Well, one talks like this, and
The other talks like this.
the other doesn't. No. So, I don't think there are any Doctor Who fans who talk like that. There is a Queen. No, the Queen. Oh dear. I was trying to describe this earlier when I was talking to Colin. British fans, I think the North American and Canadian fans are more polite. Like may I ask you a personal question, the gentleman says. You wouldn't get the may I, you'd get, oh, you, yeah, tell me. I'm doing a lot of people a disservice there, but there are certain people who definitely behave like that. I think it's sort of like, this is our television show, it's made in England, we own you. Come here. And I find it quite refreshing to have the politeness over here. But then I find that on not just the fan level, but on every level, the service industries in England are like shit industries. How appalling can we be to you and make you pay for it? Welcome to London Transport. I mean, you walk into a shop and a lot of times you'll be either totally ignored or else it's, what do you want? Never got that. No. Do you have any in the back? Or no. Whereas I think there's a great deal of criticism of the American have a nice day, or whatever. And they say, oh, isn't that horrible? It's really phony. So I thought I would rather be greeted by a phony, have a nice day, or welcome, or enjoy, or whatever, than what do you want? Yeah, of course. No, you don't have that. Did you think we are a shop? It's like part of the difference, but I think it's a cultural thing as well as just a fan thing.
In all honesty, having worked with the BBC, do you think that the show is dead or will it actually come back?
You want me to answer a question in all honesty? No, you told me that was part of... Oh, right. I've been making it all up. Right, in all honesty, do I think? I can't say because in all honesty, I don't have a definite opinion that jumps up and says this is definitely what's going to happen. I think I'm probably erring on the side of the BBC are hoping it'll die of slow suffocation. But I don't really know. There might very well, we might be doing a lot of people in the BBC a disservice. There might be a lot of people out there who are actually trying to do something about it. I don't know, I'm not in there. All I know is that I hope that somebody who really loves it, really cares about it, with money and what was the word I was looking for, other than bless you? With money and ideas, is that'll do. It wasn't the one I was going to come up with, but that'll do. You know, somebody who's really got some good ideas will get to the show soon and hire me.
You've got your question now. No, don't have any of those. Sorry, right now.
No questions, right?
Personal info, broken on personal question. Okay. I was watching the credits for Two and Cyber, and I hope nobody asked this question before. Anyway, the producer of that show is Peter Bryant. Are there any relationship?
No, I met him and he asked me, but so, are you my dad? No, there's absolutely no relationship at all. Unfortunately, Michael Bryant, the great National Theatre actor, isn't my father either. But I've often contemplated going to his dressing room and saying, hey, wouldn't this be funny? I pretended that you were my father. You know, I mean, the red rays, huh? You know. But no, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever the case may be, my dad was a terrific dad, and his name was Dennis, not Peter.
Were you ever confused by the scientific aspects of
No? Why should I be? No, I mean, if it didn't make any sense to me, I would send it back. Do you have this plain speak thing? It's a new thing that they're sort of like trying to do about lawyer gobbledygook. You know, when you get this sort of like 4-page letter which is basically saying, we can sell your house. Well, why didn't you just say that then? And they started this whole sort of campaign about plain speak as opposed to, you know, unnecessary technical lawyer speak. And if you get some letter that's sort of gobbledygook, then you have this little sticker and you go, please send it back to me in English. Which I think is a good campaign. I think it's utterly ridiculous. It's such a sort of part of something. Sidetrack myself. What was the question? Oh yes. Sorry. Oh, it's the only thing that I went away to the Star Trek set actually, because when I first, because I got some friends on Star Trek and I've been on their set, and we were discussing the fact that we have very similar gobbledygook. I think it's obviously there is going to be an element of that, but I don't think any of the main pivotal key points of the story didn't make sense, because if they did, they were caught before they actually got in front of us. I mean, it did amuse me some of the names for various things, but stranger things have happened.
Yes.
Well, they say things come in threes, and that's the third and final. It's sticker. Let's speak. Yes. Okay. Yes. No. Do I write? Do I enjoy it? Oh, it's a bit like me. It depends what kind of mood I'm in. Everything sort of from Beethoven to the blues and all the other B's in the middle, including Bartok and Billy Joel and, you know, whatever. Yes, I love Bach. I like all different sorts of music. I suppose the only thing I'm not like desperately into is extremely heavy metal and the bad rap. You know, that kind of stuff that like it's like some old headache that just keeps going on and on and on. Yeah, the new age stuff, you mean? Yeah, some of that. I mean, it depends. Like, I wouldn't want to wake up to it. I might want to play it at like 11:30 at night if I dance to it and all that kind of stuff. I've been to clubs that do it, and music, and oh dear, that's too risky. No, I like all different sorts of music, but I suppose like my two favourite popular composers, which puts me into generation, doesn't it? Because I like Elton John and Billy Joel. I just love their sort of style. But I just like all different types. I really like country music. But it's a bit like me. I like lots of different things and lots of different looks and lots of different feels. And I don't think I'm limited into sort of like having just like one thing that is the be all and end all. So I'm pretty very interesting kind of girl.
Next. Yes.
If the BBC asked you to return to Doctor Who, would you?
Yes. For lots of money. No. Sorry, the two sentences don't go together. Yeah, that is my dreams. Yes, I'd love to, and I'd love to go back and play Peri, and I'd love to go back and play some ghastly monster. I'd like to be really, really horrible. I'd like to be bald again, and all that. I'd love to do the show again, and I just think they're missing a big opportunity by not having me there. But at least I get to do the Miss Brown things, which of course have absolutely nothing to do with Doctor Who.
Question be back.
You bet. Not only that, I saw the divorce courts with them 3 weeks later. Or else it was, as I said before, Peri would have to, probably have had serious problems with the mind transplant, or Yokonos would have to change into a, very eager to please warrior. Because I don't see that Peri would have enjoyed all that, running around, let's blow up this planet and fight these people, and at the end of my next death I'll be another warrior. There were some major cultural differences there that I think, if neither of them had changed over psychology. I don't know, I was really pissed off when they married me off, because I didn't think that was the right ending. I liked it just the way it was. I got blown up. Sometimes life is hard.
Well, that's all the time we have for questions. We do have one change in the program. The autograph session that was listed in the program at 7 p.m. will be at 6 p.m. So you might want to make a note of that in the program if you want to get your autographs. And thank you, Nicola, for a fabulous panel.
Very good.
One more.
One more. You actually just my camera.
Okay. No, not yet.
Yeah.
All right. You are trying to help the doctor from being strangled. No. Now.
You press the button again.
Everybody say cheese. Good. All right, that's all right.
We're now at the Doctor Who party number 10. Starting with an array of videotapes, including Lake 7, Million Circuit, Sean, and Tune on the side, which now looks like a porno film, because we're not allowed to have the name.
No, the cover.
Yes.
Not allowed to have the cover. And it's weird.
Nicola Bryant. Grace are destroyed with her presence. You can also buy Rollout, Marvel Heroes, Forgotten Realms, and Britannia. Yes. And remember, don't let an arm in space. Buy our tapes.
Stress reliever. Stress reliever. You don't shout, you just squeeze it.
We're going to take Nicola hostage and beat the photo.
Well, that's a sample. I got the real ones behind the bar.
Yes. We got the tasteless ones.
I don't think you can stretch it out with your arms.
We don't have fun.
signed a photo for you.
Yeah.
It's only like denying it. Like,
Oh,
no, I didn't. No.
I signed my books.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I signed. No, it's not poor old Dina's can't get out. Ah, you got out. That's it. I'm sorry. Hi, how are you doing? Jolly good. This is Peter Davison. Oh, right. Hello. Look at the okay, yeah, it's been going on for some
Are we having fun? We're having fun, yes. This is on the video. We're at OCA, which is my school. We have some very nice characters today.